So today is an incredibly special day. I feel so honored to have Mindi Cox. Mindi, you're the CMO, the Chief People Officer at OC Tanner. You have been in the media, you've been in the news, you've been honored with awards, and you have so much impact in your last few years at OC Tanner. I really appreciate your time to share some of your wisdom today.
Thank you, Sheryl. I am so happy to be here with you.
So before we jump in and we ask for some of the tips, tools, and strategies on how to build a high-performing culture, which as we were talking about before we went live, during this time of, possibly economic uncertainty and maybe disruption, it just seems like it's even more important to take care of our people. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of it and just think about customers and growth. But our people are such a huge part of this. And I look forward to really understanding some of these gold nuggets of wisdom you have. But before we jump in, can you share a little bit about your journey to being the leader that you are today? Was it smooth sailing from, when young in your life and when you eventually started climbing the corporate ladder, or are there any hiccups along the way? And also, is there anyone or anything that inspired you to greatness, or anything that was really difficult that you were determined to overcome?
Wow, that is a big, big question that I will attempt to answer. But I think, you do start out with this idea that there is a corporate ladder and that there is sort of this sequential move that you're going to make, and you've got to be really thoughtful about that. And some of that is true. But the analogy that I think is more real, at least for me, and as I speak to other people who've had, their own journeys, is more of a roller coaster. Just pick the right car, decide if you want to sit up front or in the back or somewhere in the middle, and hang on, because there's going to be a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns, and you can enjoy it to whatever extent you're going to embrace the exhilaration of those changes. Definitely in my life, I feel like I embraced achievement as something that was within my control. I knew that the harder I worked and academically or at school, the more that I felt like I got acceptance from adults in my life, which was important to me. I think so many of us come from more chaotic or unstable backgrounds or home lives that's some, whatever we decide to lean into that offers us that comfort level. And for me, at least, I chose something that was mildly productive, which was school and achievement. But I think from an early age, I learned that I needed to make promises to myself that no matter what, I was going to follow through with things. So a couple of things I remember in high school saying, as insecure as I was in middle school or junior high, I knew that when I got to high school, the two things that I wanted to do was run for student body office and get my name on a plaque that they had on the wall for the ACT test. I thought that was so cool when people scored high enough to get their name on the wall for the test. And I'll tell you what, if I had not made those promises to myself before the moment for those goals came to pass, I don't think I would have done it. But I was serious about that promise. And so, when it came to the test, I took that dang test 3 times because I scored the same below my goal, twice. And then finally on that third time, I broke through and I knew my name was going to go on the plaque, which felt like a really big deal to me. That was a promise of it, something I knew I was capable of, but that was going to be a stretch goal for me. So that test achievement was important.
I just want to pause you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to pause there because you were such a world-class performer even then, without knowing it, by just keep going. And just not thinking then, oh, I got a low score, I guess I'm not good enough. You're like, no, that's happening.
Yeah. And I think, we all have an idea of what we're capable of. And I probably wouldn't have had the guts to make a goal that I didn't at some level know, I think you can do that. And it's almost like you talk to yourself in the third person. We've got this, right? We, meaning me and me, me and you, we've got this. And so that I think that's basic. And it's really been a practice that, at the time, yes, it took some extra effort, but finally manifested that goal. Running for student office, talk about being vulnerable at a time in your life when you feel like your hair's wrong, your clothes are wrong, you don't have any friends, nobody likes, you just think, but I promised myself. So, I did it. And that turned out well. Also, I had the opportunity to lead with my school. And that was probably my first leadership experience. And you learn a lot because number one, not everybody thinks you should be there. And number two, not everybody thinks you're going to make the right decisions. And number three, you're just going to do the best you can do. And it's got to be enough. And so as long as you're thoughtful about who you're serving and have some integrity about the way you show up, it's usually going to be okay. And so that was a really foundational leadership experience for me. And of course, along the way, you have all kinds of people that are playing support roles to you, encouraging you, you're doing fine, you should expect that kind of resistance, or that's normal. And so those were really conversations I had at a really, I would say, pivotal developmental time for me that gave me at least a foundation for trying whatever hard thing was next.
Mm-hmm. That sounds so important. And, today there's that interesting statistic that I don't know, I don't have the exact numbers, but people these days, especially coming out of the pandemic and what have you, do not have a lot of close friends. They don't have a lot of times a personal board of directors. And so I really want to highlight the importance of the last thing that you said. And this was, for you when you were in high school. And I imagine that you probably still have a lot of those amazing people around you now and some new ones that you've accumulated along the way. But having people just to have an internal board of directors and people who will cheer us on and say, you know what, you just need to study a little harder. Let me help you. I'll help you cross the finish line and you got this. And, those people were very important because on the flip side, if they were discouraging or who do you think you are or what have you. So it might be a good time now that we're in January for people listening to take some personal inventory and think about how do I deepen some relationships with people who are like the people that you were talking about and maybe create a little more distance, from some of the ones who might be the crabs in the bucket pulling you down.
I agree. I think one thing that we have to remember, though, is that we have to invite that board into our lives or that feedback into our lives. I think one of the most maybe surprising but helpful pieces of feedback I got about my personal way of being very early in my career was a leader who just kind of marveled in a performance review. He said, "You're so teachable." And I'm sure I wasn't always so teachable, but it really highlighted the importance for me early in my career that the one thing I have confidence in is not that I know everything, but that I can learn anything. And so being teachable and being receptive to feedback and not being defensive, not giving an explanation or assigning blame when somebody says something wasn't quite right, but just saying, help me understand, is an attitude that I think can serve anybody well. Of just, even if you disagree, just because you're hearing somebody out doesn't mean you necessarily agree with what they're saying, but having the space to even invite the conversation and to hear somebody's point of view will always leave you with a higher level of knowledge than you had going in. And I think it's an important skill set.
Yeah, and you've just dropped a huge gold nugget of wisdom there. If you didn't just really pay attention to that, it's so, so important. And what Mindi was talking about, even someone that you don't understand, or maybe they're not treating you 100% right, or they seem very off base, to at least, have some, I call it strategic empathy, but try and understand their perspective and get some more information. So that is so incredibly important. And, we were talking a little bit about creating high performing teams and high performing cultures, and also the importance of this going into possibly a new and different economy. And so it may be counterintuitive to put a focus on your culture and your people when we need to drive sales. But at the end of the day, the culture and the people do drive sales, I would imagine. And so, can you share a little bit of your wisdom on how to build a high performance culture and then how it impacts the bottom line?
Sure. We're all looking to do more with less and to be more productive and find that next level of growth, right? I'm no different. I want that. I'm looking for, what's going to help my organization, my team, myself experience whatever that next level is. But it's not an all costs equation. It can't be. That is such a short-sighted approach to making sure that you're delivering real value. And I believe that the paradigm shift about what work is and can be and should be in all of our lives has fundamentally shifted. We are looking at work as something that's additive. It's not something that we have to endure. People, we're looking at a record low and for a long time unemployment rate. People have choices, and we have needs in the market that if we are not an organization or a leader that provides a higher level of purpose, a place for somebody to come and grow, a place for people to feel cared for, a place where the energy that we hope leads to those results, the energy that we hope customers feel that they will be better off by being in partnership with us, that starts with the soul of our culture. And the soul of our culture is our people. And the soul of our people lies in the relationships that they have within our workplace. And so, you can talk about work relationships or personal relationships. As human beings, we feel what we feel in all contexts. So, I don't think that there's a big difference between what we expect out of a relationship with a boss or a leader than we do at home. We might label the behaviors differently, that we might feel connection differently with people in our personal lives, but we still have a need to feel seen and accepted and heard and respected. And if those things are not foundational to your culture at work, the soul of your organization will suffer. And I would say in spades, you will see the results of your organization suffer in the long term.
Yeah, and I imagine there's probably example after example, and maybe it's possible that there are a lot of companies during the pandemic where the pandemic was actually good for business in a weird, I don't say in a weird way, but and now, we may be moving into an economy where everybody's being put to the test, and maybe cultures, you could get away with a less than ideal culture because there were just no one really had to sell. Like the biggest issue was, supply chain. But now it seems like we're moving into a time that's going to have more of a, I don't say a microscope, a flashlight on the importance of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, people are like, oh, that sounds so nice. And that sounds so, idyllic. But what does it actually mean? And I think there's several practices that are really practical things that you can do, expecting your leaders to know their teams, expecting one-on-ones and that personal connection to be part of a daily routine. It's a standard work for your leaders. Relationships can't help but be built within frequent contact and intention of getting to know people as people. It is around, we call it exercising practical empathy. So it's not that I'm just going to invite you into my office, Sheryl, and ask how life is going. And when you tell me things are hard, just say, wow, I'm so sorry. Goodbye. Do better at work. Right? It's about having an organization that has tools and resources available to leaders and to our employees that say, oh, in situations like this is available to support you. And we know that if you are experiencing this kind of stress or strain at home, it's going to affect how you're able to show up at work. So we want to alleviate some of that. And you might think that those things are too extra or expensive to do, but when you introduce those in a thoughtful way, and we can't pick what that combination is for every workplace, you have to do that work yourself. But when you introduce those in a thoughtful way, the return on reduced attrition and increased loyalty, and even just that little extra something that your people volunteer every day because they know that this is a place where they are being surrounded with support and care as a person. Those things are harder to measure, but that you often see those in your business results.
Yeah. And it seems like it almost creates a sense of obligation. In other words, my company's caring for me, so I'm going to take care of my company by doing my absolute best at my job.
I think it's fundamentally, it becomes a healthy relationship, right? It's not how much can I extract as an employee, or how much can I withhold as an employer, or how much can I trickle out to get just what I need. We're in an abundant relationship. Like, I'm being generous with you. You're going to feel like you can be more generous with me. And I do think we're in a place where that pendulum of employees demanding, exact work conditions and salaries that didn't make sense at the time, and that we're swinging back to the middle where it is like a conversation about the value we exchange. What can I bring that's of value to this organization, and what can I expect you to value most and provide so that I have some safety and security in my life?
Yeah, 100%. And you had a personal situation where this was offered to you. And can you talk a little bit about your family and your son and your company and kind of what was going on during that time, and how it impacted, yourself and him and the amazing job that you kept doing?
So, yes, I probably didn't feel so amazing at the time, but I often will say that my company held on to me as much as I held on to them. And what I mean by that is that, when you spend a 25, 30-year career anywhere, you're going to go through some evolutions of what your life looks like and what your needs look like. And for me, I started before I was ever married, and, ended up obviously getting married, starting a family. And my third child was born with some pretty severe medical and developmental issues. And at one point in my career, when I had made it into the VP role and kind of felt like I was coming into my own, and it was like all your dreams are coming true, on the home front, there was so much pressure going on with his needs. And really, I was the person that needed to be there for him at that time. We had tried other combinations of care, but it needed to be me. And I had to make a really tough decision to leave a job I loved, a company that was part of the fabric of who I am. I believe in our purpose so strongly. But I left. I went home and figured out, one, that was the right decision for me and my son and my family. Two, that I love work. Like, it's just, I love to work, and that's okay. It's okay. I wasn't going to be made to feel guilty about that either, that I was missing this part of my life. And that I'm going to read and do and study everything that I would have done had I been in my role as a job, which was a good confirmation to me that I was in the right spot. I was reading the same books, excited about the same news, passing along things to people that were still kind of in the trenches. So, but there was a time when I was invited to come back to work after doing some consulting on my own. And I asked for the flexibility I needed, and the company wasn't quite in a space where they felt like they could offer that. And so, to my broken heart, I had to turn that opportunity down. But it was the right thing for me and my family. And then because I think we started to see roles as more of a people-centered value, I was extended another offer. Hey, this time could you come back? And I said, yeah, but my schedule needs to look like this. This is just how it needs to work. And they were open to that at the time. And I'll tell you what, I had my suspicions of whether that was going to hold after you come back in the door. Mm-hmm. But even months after my return, even years after, I would get a knock on my office window. Time to go home. You told me like you needed to be home at this time, or what are you doing here? I remember my CEO once, I was always about 5 or 10 minutes late to this monthly management meeting. And he said, is this a hard time for you? I said, actually it is. It's the same time as school drop off. And I'm the one who needs to take him in the morning. And he said, we're moving this meeting then. Wow. And I said, we've got 200 people in this meeting. He said, so who cares if it starts at 9 or 9:30? It's going to start at 9:30 going forward. And there is nothing more that he could have done to demonstrate to me that I mattered. And do we expect to do that for every single employee that has an exception? No. But he saw me, he valued me, in the role that I played in that meeting. And he knew I wasn't at my best running in 5 minutes late every month, and that I did not have the flexibility to change what caused that. So those are little things, but they're massively huge. And I would argue in any relationship and in any business culture, it is those small moments where you can see somebody and say, we can make an adjustment for you, or we can change a little something for you. And guess what? I would do the same thing for him. And now I feel permission to do the same thing for my people because he modeled that. Mm-hmm. So it's a small thing, but it meant the world to me at the time.
That is really amazing to hear. And I wish that I really hope that I hear more stories about that, and kudos to him. What a tremendous, leader he is. And I really also believe that if it was the other way, if he said, well, have someone else drop your son off, or you're just going to have to come to the meeting late, or if he didn't care, let's say, there is a direct impact to the bottom line. Who knows? I mean, as far as when morale is down, or, it probably impacts, turnover. I think there are a lot of financial implications to not doing all of the things that you're talking about. Even more important now that we're heading into possibly some economic uncertainty, and just to keep our forecast and what we want to achieve more certain, it seems so prudent and important to do consistently a lot of the things that you're talking about to create high performing cultures, and it definitely impacts the bottom line.
I would agree. And I do think too, sometimes I think we get shy about that as women, that we think we're asking for some type of an accommodation that's specific to being a female or a mother or a parent or whatever that is. But I think they are that kind of openness about what our personal or family needs are that leads to the type of loyalty and productivity that you're talking about are shared by everyone. So, I now have a COO that says, I have to leave at 2:00 today. My daughter has a basketball game. And it's not like I have a personal appointment or I'm unavailable this afternoon. It gives permission to be real, to say, I'm leaving for a basketball game. And guess what we get to do the next day or that night? Text each other. How'd she do? How was the game? And so it just up levels our loyalty to each other and our ability to support each other. And there's no less work getting done. And when you get to a certain level in a company, it is about having a responsibility, not a job. And so when you treat your area of responsibility like that, and it's not a transactional thing where I will show up and fill this slot from 9 to 5. It's whatever it takes to fill this responsibility, because we have an understanding that I'm going to do that in the best way I will, and you have trust. You have trust in me that the responsibility will get fulfilled. We get that flexibility in how we do that. And that's really, I think, where you get a lot of joy, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of connection between teams, is when you start to treat areas of responsibility rather than jobs, and it becomes far less transactional.
Yeah, and sounds like then it's also important to give people some autonomy. There's of course accountability, and there's, metrics and measurements and all of these things in place, but it's autonomy and trust, along with those things.
And there's an expectation that we have what we call a 5 by 5. And this is a personal rating scale that we use to talk about the level of variable pay that people are going to receive during the year. So on the one axis is outcomes. Did you meet expectations? Did you meet your goals? Did you hit your targets? But on the other axis is way of being. How much do people like working with you? How much do people want you on the team? How much do you up-level teams that you join? And so every box kind of has a description that gives people a sense of what it feels like to be a person in that area of performance. But I think those are inextricably linked for us, right? The outcomes that you generate and the way that you do it. And I think if more organizations would embrace that, people are able to show up as more of themselves, because it's not just about the outcomes and it's not just about having a good time. We believe you can do both.
Yeah. And it just seems like if people can show up wholly as themselves in a way that fits their life, then they can more fully do their job.
100%.
So you've shared so many things. I can't wait to get the show notes and recap this in a couple days. But is there a call to action or something that you want to leave listeners with to just make sure to think about this, make sure to do this, or, any piece of wisdom maybe that you would have given your younger self?
That's a good question. I think just having trust that if you show up in an all-in way, right? Whatever your opportunity is right now. We've got some people that are looking so far ahead that they're neglecting to be excellent in the role that they're given right now, the responsibility that they have right now. So really show up, add value, add even original value to whatever it is that you do, and then you are given all kinds of permission to ask for more. Mm-hmm. And that has been a pattern that has been true for me. And I think it's true for so many. I think about the people on my team right now that are all in. They're really showing up and they're really adding value. And it's oftentimes me asking, hey, I want you to be on this team or this project, or I feel like you're ready for this next level of responsibility. It just plays out. I think that seems to be the pattern of success for me, and not getting too rigid in the form factor of what success looks like for your next step. Mm-hmm. Just, when that door opens and somebody says, I think you're really good at this, I'd like you on this team or to work on this project, walking through that door, even if you don't feel 1,000% prepared for it, their confidence in you makes you prepared enough.
Mm-hmm. So valuable. So be high performing in whichever role that you're in, and be willing then to take a step into the unknown. If someone sees something in you that maybe you don't even see in yourself. So much wisdom shared, Mindi. OC Tanner is so lucky to have you. And as we were so lucky to spend some time with you today, I look forward to following your journey.
Thank you, Sheryl.